What are the best and worst tricep exercises that will make your arms look like balloon or spaghetti SpongeBob? In this video, I will rank 20 of the most common and unique tricep exercises, from S tier for super jacked to F tier for fucking whack. And at the end of the video, I will rank one exercise to Spanish ham tier as the best of the best, and to skinny pencil neck tier for the worst of the worst. To make sure that your favorite exercise doesn't end up in skinny pencil neck tier, it needs to have the following 6 attributes. It needs to allow your triceps to get a full range of motion, get a full stretch and a full contraction. The exercise needs to have the most tension in the stretch position. As we all know, the latest trend, the stretch position is the most hypertrophic part of a movement. It also needs to be stable enough for you to maximize force production. If building muscle, hypertrophy is your goal, you don't want any balancing or shit like that going on. The exercise needs to feel good on the elbows so you don't get pain and aches while performing it. It needs to be easily progressible so you can get strong as fuck on it. And as a bonus, it needs to bias the long head of the triceps. If you're a complete newbie and you don't know what the fuck a long head is, I will quickly go over the anatomy of the triceps. It will take 15 seconds. This meaty part is long head. As you can see, it gives you the most size on the triceps, especially when you hit a double biceps and it is fucking hanging off your arm. That's why it is the most important part of your triceps. Then there's the lateral head of the triceps, which will make you a French citizen, as it gives you that croissant shape on your arm, especially when lean and shredded. Then there's the medial head, which is a puny fucking sushi sized muscle, which you don't have to worry about. It will grow on its own. Let's start with the most common pushdown variation, the rope pushdown. So pushdown variations bias the lateral and medial head more than the long head, as the lateral and medial head have the most leverage and therefore get the most work done when your arm is in front or beside your body. So the rope pushdown is a good exercise to grow the lateral and medial head of the triceps, but it has its downsides. Due to the rope being unstable and flapping around in space, when performing the rope pushdown, you are less locked in and not stable. And due to the instability of the rope, you are severely limited with the load you can handle, as the force by your triceps that you put into the rope gets lost. And on top of that, it is fucking weird to set the rope pushdown up to be stretch biased. But how do you set up a pushdown variation to be stretch biased? Let's see how it can be performed that way by the competitor, the bar pushdown. For a pushdown to be stretch biased, your forearm needs to have a 90-degree angle or be perpendicular with the cable resistance. Position yourself directly under the cable pulley to form that perpendicular angle from your forearm to the cable pulley. Then drive your elbows backwards during the eccentric, like in a drag curl, to get more elbow bend. Letting your elbow rise on the eccentric, like most people do, is less superior. You may get a little bit more long head activation that way, but you lose all the tension when your lateral and medial head could get stretched the fuck out. If you want to hit your long head with a pushdown variation and get beefy fucking arms, you can stick to the end of the video to see which exercise actually does that. So with a bar pushdown, whether it's a easy bar, a V-bar or a straight bar, as I said, it is much easier and much comfortable, much more natural to set it up to be stretch biased. Compared to the rope pushdown, it is fucking weird to do that, from an anecdotal experience of course. I don't know what the science says. The most obvious benefit of the bar itself is that you are more locked in into the exercise. You don't have any instability going on. You can push to failure and put maximum force into that attachment as possible. You have much greater capacity for overloading and progressing. The only downside of the bar pushdown is that it can be tough on the elbows if you're not used to it and you rush the weight jumps too quickly, or if you have previous elbow pain and aches. But you can easily work yourself around that by progressing slowly, maybe picking a lighter weight, picking a higher rep range, and working yourself up. So where do I rank these? I would put the rope pushdown into the B tier. It is not the worst of the worst exercises out there, but given how common and popular this exercise is, it is highly overrated. The bar pushdown, in comparison, is much more stable. You can stretch the fuck out of your triceps. It is an A tier exercise. The biggest downside of the normal pushdown variations where you are standing are your stability demands. When you get close to your body weight, or actually surpass it if you're that fucking strong, you will notice that instability will hinder your progress, as you have to balance your body in space while performing an exercise with heavy ass loads without any external stability going on. Why do you think that in the lat pull down you have those thigh pads so you don't fly across the fucking room? If your pushdowns get too strong, the same will happen. But what is the fix? Enter the incline pushdown. The incline pushdown is by far the best pushdown variation for the lateral and medial head. It is the most stable of the bunch, as you are back supported by a bench. You can easily yank around weight that is near your body weight without any instability limiting you. It is anti-cheat friendly, as you're locked in place, which means that your triceps get isolated completely without any other muscle group taking over. And like in a Bayesian curl where you are facing away from the cable stack, the incline pushdown is the most stretch biased pushdown variation of them all. Facing away from the cable station gives you even more tension in the lengthened position, due to the cable pulley angle. The incline pushdown, with all the superior benefits that it has, goes straight into the S tier. Then there is the complete opposite, the reverse grip pushdown. The reverse grip doesn't give you any additional benefits, but only drawbacks. Your grip and extensor strength will limit the potential load you can lift with your actual triceps. I could maybe see a use case if your wrists are so fucked up that you cannot hold a bar and perform a pushdown, but most of the time just using a rope would fix that. Even with that excuse to not put it in F tier, it is still fucking dog shit. It goes straight into F tier. Let's get into the spicy stuff, long head exercises. First, I will have to talk about the long head anatomy. So the long head crosses both the elbow joint and shoulder joint. So the lateral, medial, and long head are responsible for elbow extension. But out of all the three heads of the triceps, only the long head is responsible for shoulder extension. So because the long head crosses the shoulder joint, it is fully contracted when your arm is down and behind your body, and fully stretched when it is overhead. So now that we know that, I will firstly go over the long head exercises that fully contract it. Why? Because we are actually not over with the pushdown variations. So there doesn't only exist the rope pushdown, but also the dual rope pushdown, which actually has a unique benefit of biasing the long head of the triceps. So due to having two ropes in a dual rope pushdown, you can actually go past and behind your body and also fully extend your elbow in that position, unlike in a normal rope pushdown where you would be limited and you could not do that. But doing exercises where your arm is behind your body and where the long head is fully shortened, isn't that a bad thing? No, and here's why. The long head itself is fully shortened in that position, but it still has the most leverage out of all three heads. Every exercise, especially when training triceps, when it comes to it being lengthened or shortened bias, is more so of a body position thing. So the long head itself being fully shortened in that position behind your body doesn't mean that the exercise itself is shortened bias. You can still position yourself to get the most tension in the stretch position, just like in a preacher curl, which is goated for maximizing bicep gains. The preacher position, where your arms in front of your body, puts the bicep in a fully shortened position, but you still get the most tension in the stretch itself. But the biggest downside of the dual rope pushdown is the same like in a normal rope pushdown, which is the instability factor due to using double the ropes. But in my opinion, it is still superior to a normal rope pushdown, as it has the unique benefit of biasing the long head, which means that it belongs one tier above the normal rope pushdown into the A tier. The dual rope pushdown also has its superior brother, the cross-body extension. So the cross-body extension has the same benefits of a dual rope pushdown, but it loads and isolates both arms individually as you're using two separate cable pulleys, which gives you the benefit of fixing muscle imbalances while being a bilateral movement. So you don't have to isolate one arm at a time. This is the most joint-friendly pushdown of them all, as the weight from the stack and tension you put into it runs straight through your arm. You have no diverging forces acting on your elbow, which could injure you. In my anecdotal experience, it is also much easier and much smoother to load than a normal dual rope pushdown. It feels much more comfortable and less awkward. The progression, especially when you have a cable station which has small weight jumps, it's just smooth. The only downside I see for this exercise is that it can be tough to perform in a crowded gym if you don't have a cable station with two pulleys on one side. You know, those TikTok Psalms goblins are always fucking taking away the cable station. Due to all the benefits the crossbody extension has, I would put it straight into the S tier. The single arm pushdown. It literally has the same benefits as the crossbody extension. It's literally the same fucking exercise. The only upside here is that you're isolating one arm at a time, which maximizes motor unit recruitment, which could maybe give you more gains in the long run. And if you position yourself right and hold onto something, it is slightly more stable than a crossbody extension, but it is very time consuming as you have to perform all sets individually on both arms. Due to that con, I would put it one tier below the crossbody extension into the A tier. The dumbbell kickback. This exercise has been long forgotten, and for a good reason. The dumbbell kickback has zero tension in the stretch position and max tension in the contract position. That is literally the worst possible resistance profile there is, as your actual muscle is the strongest in the stretch position, where it should be loaded the most, and the weakest in the contract position, where the load should drop off, so it is actually acting against your muscle strength. It goes straight into F tier. If you only have free weights or only dumbbells available to you, long head exercises that I will go over in a minute would be much more better for your situation. We've now discussed all the exercises that put the long head in a shortened position when your arm is behind or beside your body. Now we look at the exercises where your arm is above your head, which puts the long head in a fully stretched position. So the most common exercise here is the cable overhead extension. I have a love for this exercise as it is the first exercise that I did for my triceps, and it is the exercise I attribute the most size of my beefy looking arm. So there are two ways to perform the cable overhead extension. The first one will be standing. The downside of this is that it can be tough to set it up, and due to you not having any external stability going on, it is not stable if you're actually strong and lose lots of weight, as the weight is putting you backwards without you bracing anywhere. The second way you can perform it is how I call it, the leaning overhead extension. Here you use your feet as a brace against the cable stack, lean over so the weight is actually pulling you in the position where you are braced and you're not just flapping around in space. When performed this way, you are much more stable and can solely focus on your triceps. You can therefore load it up much more heavily, you can progress it easier and have much greater overload potential than the standing version, which is more unstable. And another benefit is that the stronger you get, the heavier the weights get, your ability to set the exercise up will not be compromised like in the standing version. The standing version belongs into the A tier and the leaning version into the S tier. In the cable overhead extension, you can use two types of attachments, a rope or a bar. A rope is less stable, which means that it limits the load that you can put on your triceps, but it may be more comfortable for your elbows. A bar is more stable, so you can load the exercise up more heavily, but it may be more uncomfortable on your elbows. Despite that, I would put the rope version of the overhead extension into the A tier and the bar version of it into the S tier. The cable Katana extension is the crossbody extension of the lengthened position. It loads both arms individually while performing it bilaterally, which saves time. It is the most elbow-friendly version of the overhead extensions, as you have no diverging forces acting on your elbows, as the weight is going straight through your arm and your elbows, due to you using two individual cable pulleys. And this is a huge win, as overhead extensions tend to bother most people in the elbows. I don't know why, as you are extending your elbows just like in a pushdown, your arm is just over your head, but it is still a huge win. The only downside just in the crossbody extension is that cable stations are almost always packed nowadays due to TikTok taking over the fitness industry, and it can be tricky to overload it if you don't have the perfect cable station with smaller increments. But if you can work yourself around that, I would still put it into the A tier. The French press is the free weight equivalent of the overhead extension. You could either perform it with a dumbbell or with an easy bar. It hits the long head very well. It could be even better than the cable version, especially due to the resistance curve or resistance profile being the most challenging in the stretch position, having the most tension there due to how gravity works, and your forearm position, which is a huge win. But on top of that, the difficulty drops off in a contracted position, which is an ideal resistance profile. The downside of this exercise is that it can be very uncomfortable on the wrist, whether you're performing it with an easy bar or a dumbbell. Especially if you get stronger, the dumbbells just get bigger and bigger, therefore the uncomfortability on your wrist also gets bigger and bigger. And the setup, it can be awkward as hell if you actually are strong and you have to yank the weight up to get into the position. And this also gets weirder the stronger you get. Lots of jacked bodybuilders love this exercise. I don't like it that much, but to pay respect to them, I would put it somewhere between B and A tier. The single arm dumbbell overhead extension is the same as a French press, but you're just performing it with a single arm and it can only be performed with a dumbbell. It's the same benefits of the perfect resistance profile, just like in a French press, but it is much easier to set it up. It is much more comfortable on your wrists and potentially on the elbows as you're using one arm at a time. It's again good for preventing muscle imbalances or even maximizing your triceps growth as you're focusing on only one arm at a time. But it is very time consuming to perform one arm at a time. So I won't put it straight into B tier, but also somewhere in between B and A tier. Skull crusher is one of the most famous and common exercises out there. What if I told you that it is not actually as good as I think it is? The classic easy bar skull crusher has the unique benefit that it can be performed multiple ways to either bias the medial and lateral head or the long head of the triceps. So when performing the skull crusher for the long head, you would put your arm above your head. I loved that exercise back then, but when now looking back at it, it doesn't make any fucking sense. When putting your arm above your head, even if your long head is fully stretched, you have literally zero tension in the stretch position. Due to how gravity works, how free weights work, when you are in the stretch position, the free weight is the closest to your actual elbow joint, which means that you have no tension there. And when you extend your arm and you get into the shorter position, you have much more tension there as the weight, quote unquote, gets heavier. That's just how free weights work. When performed this way, it's literally just a worse version of an overhead extension. But that version of the skull crusher isn't actually the traditional way to perform it. As the name skull crusher entails, you actually have to aim towards your skull. When performed this way, it's actually just like a pushdown, but with a back support, as you're just extending your arm and not moving at the shoulder joint. It is a very good exercise, but it can be very uncomfortable for the elbows, as you're using a very narrow grip with no adjustability on the easy bar. Due to that factor, I would put it into the B tier, not because it is a bad exercise, but because I have a better one for you just in a minute. Now we come to the dumbbell version of the skull crusher. It has the same benefits and features as the easy bar version of it, with the slight benefit of it being more elbow friendly, as you have more freedom of setup. Due to the neutral arm position, you can bend your elbows more comfortably, which gives you more of a stretch. It again loads up both arms individually while being a bilateral movement, which is very good for saving time and minimizing muscle memories and stuff like that. I already repeated myself 1,000 times, you get the idea. Remember when I said that the skull crusher isn't as bad, but there's a better option, the barbell jam press. The barbell jam press is essentially if a close grip bench and a skull crusher had a baby. Instead of aiming to the skull or aiming to the chest, most of the time you're aiming between your nose and your clavicle. This means that you get much more stretch on your triceps in the lengthened position. This crazy elbow bend will put fucking mass on your triceps. The jam press also gives you better joint alignment with your elbows and your wrist than in a traditional skull crusher, as you have much more freedom for grip width. It is also crazy good for developing strength for bench press type of movements or general pressing strength, as again it is a skull crusher and bench press hybrid, which means that it is very specific. Even if it's better when it comes to alignment than skull crusher, it can still be tough on the elbows, but that can be worked around easily by just micro-loading it, getting slowly into the movement, not overdoing it, using a lighter weight than you think you can handle, using slower eccentrics, maybe higher rep ranges, and especially not exploding out of that deep stretch, but gradually applying force and then exploding. Even after that love message to the barbell jam press, I will only put it into the A tier because there is an even better alternative, and that is the Smith jam press. The Smith jam press has all the same benefits of a barbell jam press. It is the same exercise, but it is much more stable and much easier to learn. Due to the added stability and dummy press nature of the Smith machine jam press, the overload potential is even crazier. Imagine doing 2 plates plus for a tricep exercise. Your triceps would get fucking beefy for sure. It also has crazy grindability. You can always do 1 more rep even if you think you're done. Due to all of these factors, the Smith jam press goes straight into the fucking S tier. Isolations are the most important exercises to grow your triceps to the max. But if you want to go even further beyond, you could also consider triceps biased compounds. Let's start with the standard dip. Again, the dip doesn't really isolate the triceps as it is a compound movement. It also trains the chest and the shoulders, but you can bias the triceps by taking a closer grip, by staying more upright, which gives you more elbow bend and more tension on the triceps, or simply using a reverse grip, which exaggerates both of those things. The dip has crazy progressibility and loading potential. Due to the pushing angle, most people are stronger on a dip than they are on a flat bench press, for example. So when overloading the dip, you could either do weighted dips, or to take off tension from the chest and put it more on the triceps, you could use chains. With chains, the closer you get to the lockout, where the lateral and medial head actually have more leverage, the dip gets heavier and more difficult as the chains are coming off the floor. You can even perform it outside if you don't have a gym membership or if you are on vacation. I myself haven't given the dip enough time, so I don't have a lot of anecdotal experience, but there are so many strong dippers who have huge fucking triceps. Success leaves clues, so I would put the dip in the A tier. Of course, for isolating the triceps, it is not superior to a pushdown or any other exercise like that, but putting it into the C tier would not be deserving at all. But an exercise that is better than most of tricep exercise is the machine dip. The machine dip, just like the jam press, is a hybrid lift. It combines a dip with a pushdown. With a machine dip, you can position yourself into the machine in a way that puts a crazy amount of bend and tension on the triceps in a lengthened position, without you having to awkwardly staying upright and hurting your shoulders that way. And potentially, depending on the machine, if you have a thigh pad or not, it is also much more stable than a bodyweight or weighted dip, and it is definitely smoother to progress as in a bodyweight dip. If you are bulking, which you should do if you want to build muscle, it's kind of strange to track your progress if you're not weighing yourself in the gym or before the gym, as even if you're getting stronger, you're still using the same weight or performing the same amount of reps as you're getting heavier and heavier on the bulk, which could be discouraging for some if they don't know that. So the machine dip has kind of this psychological benefit of you knowing, okay, I progressed, I did a rep more, or I increased in weight. Literally the only con for the machine dip is that it is not available in every single gym, but if you have one, it is a fucking S tier exercise. Let's start with the most common of the bench press variations, the close grip bench press. The close grip bench press doesn't give you a huge stretch or huge amount of arm bend in the bottom position. And on top of that, your shoulder and chest are actually more active in the bottom, which isn't a huge deal as your lateral and medial head have more leverage in the mid and short end position. If you want to maximize the triceps growth, any exercise that slightly biases the triceps more is still beneficial, even if it's not stretch biased. The close grip bench press, just like a dip, has crazy overload potential, and it also has godly strength carryover to all pressing movements, just like a dip, which I forgot to mention. And on top of that, due to the close grip, it gives you more upper chest gains, which is a slight bonus. Close grip bench press is very fucking good for the triceps, but I wouldn't put it over the dip, so it goes into the B tier. The next exercise most people don't do, the close grip incline bench, has the same benefits of a normal close grip bench, but it gives you more range of motion, and more range of motion where your triceps are actually active, which means that it is slightly better than a normal close grip bench press, but I still wouldn't put it in A tier, so it belongs somewhere in between B and A tier. Whether you're performing a close grip bench press on the incline or on a flat bench, if you're performing the exercise in a Smith machine, the exercise gets so much fucking better. The Smith machine gives you much more stability, and you can therefore just dummy press the weight, put as much mechanical tension on the muscle without any stabilizing going on or shit like that. The exercise is much more grindable as you are much more stable, and you can therefore go closer to failure, which is beneficial for muscle growth and with more safety as you don't need to have a spotter. So when doing a close grip bench press or the incline version of it, with a Smith machine, it gets put one tier above. As on a dip, on the bench press, you can also load up chains instead of just using normal weights, which can take load off the chest and the shoulders and bias the triceps even more. So chains in general just belong into A tier at this point. The only problem with these combat exercises is that you cannot bias the long head with them. In pressing exercises, the long head is lengthening at the shoulder joint and shortening at the elbow joint at the same time, which means that there is not much going on at the long head when you're pressing. After all that yapping, which exercise is the best of the best and which one is the worst of the worst? So into the Spanish ham tier, if I could only pick one exercise, that exercise would need to bias the long head as it cannot be hit on other pressing movements, which means that I would take the leaning overhead extension, preferably with a bar attachment. Look what it did to me, straight into the Spanish ham tier, without even thinking about it. I may be a bit biased and I'm cheating here, but if I could take two exercises, as we also want to train the lateral and medial head, I would definitely take the Smith machine GM press straight into the Spanish ham tier. If there's one exercise that will leave your arms looking like spaghettis, that will make you a skinny pencil neck, it is the dumbbell kickback. What are the takeaways and most important lessons of this video? First, heavy compound exercises won't maximize the triceps gains on their own, but they're still a viable tool. Second, using a variety of exercise would be best. Incorporate pushdowns, skull crushers and jam presses that bias the lateral medial head, then also pushdowns with your arms extended behind your body that put the long head into a shortened position. You can never get enough long head. Then especially overhead extensions where your long head is the most stretched. And if you want to get the biggest triceps possible, you should also utilize some heavy triceps biased compounds. Third, focusing on the long head would be advised. It may not give you the definition and croissant look of the lateral head, but it will give you much more mass than all the other heads. I'm fucking cooked. I've been recording for 2 hours. Please watch another one right here, or I will kill this motherfucker.